afternoon, golf fans. Chris here with DFSR.com to bring you my DFSR. Want to look at today at the PGA optimizer tool, and I'm going to go through it here, a little bit of a tutorial video, just kind of show you the ins and outs of it for anyone that is new, anyone that's just joining in here at the start of the 2022 season. I'm going to be looking at the Sony Open to go through this. I will be going through a bit more in the future as we receive some questions about the optimizer as well. We're still working on some things, but this is going to be what we've got going right now. And I'm going to be using this myself personally for 20 max this week. Next week, I think I'm going to be testing the 150 max, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. So let's just jump right in here and just have a look. Before we get going, you head over to DFSR.com. This is where you're going to find, if you scroll down, this is where you're going to find our articles. There's the PGA article for this week for the Sony Open. Now, if you're looking to get into the tool, if you want to grab a free trial, you can head over, sign up with the free trial here. 7-day free trial gives you access to our optimizer tools and projections for NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, and PGA, all under, we have all those tools under one price tag. It's also, like I said, going to give you 7-day free trial when you start your subscription for $29.95 a month. Also gives you access to my DFS cheat sheets. For anyone that is in DFSR chat, you see these each and every week. I've got my DFSR ranks for the full tournament here. I've got bet card, prize picks, plays, tons of stats, a customizable model, and I use this sheet in conjunction with the DFSR tools to make my lineups each and every week. So let's just jump right into the optimizer tool here. So we've got DraftKings and FanDuel. We've got Classic and Showdown. So where I started every week is with my own personal player pool. So one thing that I will do is go and choose all the players that I do have highlighted and in my DFS ranks. And what I will do is just go and X out all the players that are not in my player pool. It takes a little bit longer of a process that way. You don't have to do it that way. I also audit these projections for the DFSR system, which are going to be very close to what I have for my rankings anyway. So one thing that I will do for DraftKings, one thing you do have to do is lock a player and lock one or two players, or you have to X out a player as well to make it work. That's the legalities laid out by DraftKings themselves. FanDuel, you can just run the optimizer, and I will show that here as well. We're going to jump over and open up a FanDuel here as well while I'm going through the DraftKings. So on the DraftKings, I have locked, I've got Webb Simpson in there, and I've actually got it over on the right-hand side. A couple other things that I use: number of lineups, 1 to 50 lineups you've got here, and then you've got the randomness. So I'm going to go over that once I go over my initial run of 50 lineups that I've got down here below. I'm not touching the basic filter here, which looks at salary. I'm going to talk about that here shortly as well. If you want to come in, if you don't really agree with some of these projections that you see, or maybe you scroll down and you see a guy like Brendan Steele, he's been very good here. His form hasn't been as great, but if he's someone that you maybe want in your lineups, you maybe don't want to lock him in 100% in your lineups, but you feel that his projection should be a little bit higher. You just come in this here, in this square box, and you're just going to type in, let's just say 85. Reset that. You now go sort points highest to lowest. He is now up there, 85. He's going to show up in your lineups a little bit more that way. So that's one way that you can go through and actually auto adjust some of the projections higher or lower without having to fully lock or fully X out a player from your player pool. So that's one thing that I do, and I'm going to show you how I use that here in a second. So I ran 50 lineups. And here's how it looks. So you're going to see a little red number to the right of each player. That shows you within those 50 lineups the percent that player shows up. So in the top lineup, we've got Joel Damon, 36%, Taylor Gooch, 86% throughout all lineups, Patton Kizzire, 44%, excellent course history, Stuart Sink playing very well, very cheap as well, both those guys. So we do have a bit of a stars and scrubs here, but it's fairly balanced, to be honest, because we don't even get into that 6K range. It's a 10, 9, 8, and then 3, 7K guys in here. Seamus Power, 60%, and Webb Simpson, 82% in our lineups. So let's just say, for instance, I wanted a little bit less of Webb Simpson. He's at 82%. So one way to do that is just come in here and maybe just bring this down to, let's say, 96 point. We'll bring him under Cam Smith. If you feel Cam Smith's a little bit better play this week, I'm going to bring his projection just lower than that. Re-optimize these lineups here, clicking that red button, letting it do all the math that it does here. It's going to pop out 50 new lineups. We're probably going to see a little bit different of a setup. Yeah, we got Russell Henley now up to 68%. We've got Corey Connors in the top lineup. So what it's done now is we've replaced it with Henley and Corey Connors into the top lineup. Now, when we search Webb, and I just do a Control F here to find Webb, looks like we've got him 32 times, so 64%. So we went down from 82% to 64% just by adjusting his overall point projection here. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing that we are working on is this percent column. This is going to be limiting the exposure. So if you only wanted, say, 50% of Webb, you would go ahead and put 50% in there, rerun those lineups, and he should show up no more than 50%. We had him at 60. This is part of the tool that I've been working with getting to work. Let's just jump in here and now find Webb again. Yeah, we're down to 50%. So that's another way you can do it. So there's two ways that you can go ahead and start limiting your players' exposures. If you just wanted to run the lineups, you can definitely do that. So let's look at these lineups now. So what we see, first of all, with 50 lineups, we got the randomness filter at 0, and these are the two that I use the most. Even the basic filter here with the salary basic filter as well. But this randomness for GPP, I usually try and run, first of all, if you're running 50 lineups, this is how I would do it. I would take my core, I would get my first run of lineups set the way I wanted with that randomness at 0, 50 lineups, and go ahead and, like I said, just play with your exposures, maximum exposure for players. Go ahead and adjust your projections the way you see fit as well. If you're not going to be doing any of that, just run those lineups. What you're going to see is we got a lot of players between, say, 40 and 60% exposure. We got Joel Damon, Cameron Davis, 40. We got a ton of Taylor Gooch here at 92%. Keep these numbers in mind as we go ahead and adjust that filter. We got Russell Henley, 70, 78 with Sink, 52. So we're going to see with the randomness at 0, we're going to see a very concentrated player pool. We're not going to have very many players in that player pool when we create those 50 lineups. Now, let's go crank it up to 100 randomness and just see the difference here. Pay attention to the red numbers, which are your exposures throughout those 50 lineups. That is the big change here that we're going to see. Okay, so we got it at 100. We're probably not the top lineups, but as we start scrolling down, we're going to start seeing some other players starting to show up at smaller percentages. Charles Howell starts to come in. He's a player I'm going to want lots of. If you've been paying attention to my sheet or my other video going over my top picks for the week, I definitely like Charles Howell. So he is someone that I would definitely crank up. 90% Gooch, I'm not really looking at a whole bunch. Oh, see the randomness. There we go. Let's try this again now. You got to watch when you drag that over that it sticks to your mouth like that. So you just got to click when you're done. At 100, we'll run that again. Now we'll see the difference. So just going over some of these plays while it does run that for the Sony Open here. Webb Simpson, core play, Leishman, Charles Howell. Between the three of them, believe it or not, they have never missed a cut. I believe Charles Howell's he's been here 20 times. He's made the cut in all of them, as well as 10 times a top 10 finish. So top 10 and 50% of his trips here, and we're talking a 20 tournament sample size. That is absolutely amazing for his price. So he's definitely someone that I'm going to want to crank up. But first of all, let's look at this randomness again. So now we start looking at our lineups. These percentages have gone down dramatically. So we're now in the 10 to 20% per player. We're not seeing any players. Cameron Smith is at 30%. That is about the only player. We got Webb Simpson at 26, Russell Henley at 20. So I'm fine with that. Those are three of my top players this week. I have no problem with them being the top when I run this randomness filter at 100. And really what all that's doing is just spitting out more players. So we're getting Keith Mitchell thrown in now. We're getting David Lipsky. Not 100% on that. He's probably one I would definitely X out. And if you want to totally eliminate a player from your player pool so he doesn't show up at all you have to do is hit the X here to eliminate, or up here in your player pool. So that's one reason why the first step that I use once I've gone through my cheat sheet and I've narrowed down my core players is I come through with the DFSR tool, and it takes time, but the best way to use the tool is to take that time. So usually what I'll do is I'll sort by salary, so it's sorted the same as my cheat sheet, and I'll have them on two separate screens, and I will just come through here and I'm Xing out any players that are not in my player pool on the sheet. That eliminates when you start building. Now, one thing you will notice if you do that is if you make your player pool too small for the optimizer making 50 lineups, especially when you're on the randomness filter of 100. You're probably going to start seeing players pop into your lineups that you've already X'd out. And that's just because the algorithm cannot handle the amount of players that you have, whether it be you have too many expensive players or just not enough players in general. So keep that in mind if you're building 50 lineups and Xing out a lot of players and building your own player pools. You're going to see some of these errors at times. And if you do have questions, definitely reach out to me. You can reach out on Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9 or at Daily Fantasy SR or in the DFSR chat down here as well. I'm in there almost every day. So that kind of covers the way I'm using the optimizer. So what I will do when I'm doing a 50 max build, like I said, I'm going to go randomness 0. I'm going to set my player pool. I'm going to go out and X all the players from my player pool and get it the way I like it. I'm going to run the optimizer. And like I said, you're going to get a lot of players in that 40 to 80% exposure range because your player pool is a lot smaller. And that's because the randomness filter is set down at 0. So if I'm building 50 max, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. This is going to be a little bit chalkier, of course, depending on what players you lock in. But for me, this is kind of like my chalky build, the first 50. I've optimized it, and then I kind of just go through one more time, make sure no players are showing up that I don't want to. But from what I see, it's building my very small player pool and building it into 50 lineups, exactly what I want. I'll go ahead and export that to a CSV. I will name it, let's call it 150 max and in brackets 1. That's going to save there. So then number 2, what I'm going to do, and while I'm doing that, I'm actually going to go in. No, I can't do it right now. All right. So number 2, I probably take this into a right up to 100. Optimize it again. Exposures are going to be a little bit lower with some of those players. So what we're going to do now is just kind of go through and make sure again that some players that we don't want showing up are not showing up. We're going to scroll through and just kind of quickly go through these 50, maybe adjust our exposures. If we maybe have too much of one player that we didn't want, we can go in and adjust that now. If we do like it, we go ahead and export, and we're going to call this 150 max brackets 2. And then for a third one, it really depends. If you want to keep your player pool, maybe like, let's say the first one with the randomness at 0, we can go back to that. And one way that I will go through and make it a little bit different, I'll wait till it pops up here so I can show you exactly what I mean, but I'm going to lower the exposures to some players. Like we've got 40 to 80% of a lot of these players, but there's some of them that I don't really like. Gooch there is at 90%, so I would probably lower him. We're going to go 50% on him. Another player, Henley, I probably only want 40% of Henley in there. Charles Howell is someone that I want more of, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put him in the... Geez, let's get him up to... I'm going to go 90 because he's been really, really good here. So there's just 3 minor adjustments that I've made. We'll go through here. Maybe power a little bit lower. So we'll find power on the list up here. We'll go in and we'll maybe limit him to 40% exposure. Now we'll go re-optimize that one again and see where it's at. Scroll through, make sure we like what we see. We got him down to 50%. See, that put Howell into 100% just by upping his projection that little bit. Give him 100% exposure in our lineups. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Howell, and I'm now going to limit his exposure to 60% of my lineups. I'm going to rerun that optimizer again. This takes time. I mean, you can just go in and simply hit the optimize button and get lucky and it turn out to be the top lineup if you're just playing one lineup or the 50 lineups or whatever, but you're going to do a lot better the more time you put in. You probably heard that a lot before. The more you put in, the more you're going to get out of something. And I totally believe that with optimizers. It's not just a plug and play and expect to hit the big payday. You really got to put the time in. So I really like what I see here now. I've got 60% Howell. I've got Gooch down to 50%. I've got Cameron Davis 48. That might be a little bit high, but for now it's fine. For the point of I'm trying to get across here in this video, we've got all the players that I do like with lots of exposure so far. Maybe I might go a little bit less here or there, but you get the point of how I'm going through. First of all, with my chalk build, and then I'm taking that same chalk build, and then I'm going to readjust some exposures and build 50 more. So we're now going to call this 150 max. Now that we've got all 3 of those built and saved as CSVs down here on the bottom, when we open DraftKings, Let's just see. I'm going to open it here on another screen and see. I don't have any. What I normally do is go into. I have to do it on my phone app because it works a lot easier to mass reserve contests. I'll go into a contest. I'm just going to bring this up here. I'll slide this over. When we're looking at contests, Classic, Sony Open. Let's just grab. I believe this is 150 max. No, that's a 20 max. 20. Grab a good contest here, going into tournaments. This will be 150 max here. Okay, so the drive to the green, the $5 one, the 150 max. So if we go into lineups, one thing you can do, and there's several ways. So if you go in, and these are some of the lineups I've got in here already. If you go through your phone and you mass reserve for whatever contest you're in, when you come in here and you go to edit entries, Golf Classic, you can see now here I've built 22 different lineups. I can download a CSV for those lineups, open it. Now here are your lineups. These are your 6 spots. I'm just going to delete it here just for a second just to show you. We want to delete all of those. That is not exactly how we wanted to do it. There we go. So this is what it's going to look like if you don't have any lineups in there. So this was my $1 lineup, so I'm not worried about that. But this is my 20 max. These ones here are my 20 max. So what I would want to do if I'm just building 20 max with those 50 is I would open this CSV, the one that I downloaded from DFSR, and I would pick 20 lineups, whatever 20 I wanted. But for this example, I'm going to use the top 20. 6 columns across, 20 rows down. We are going to copy that information. We're going to go to that DraftKings CSV that we just downloaded with our edit entries, and we're going to drop it in there. Now, when we click X and save, we can now just come back to upload. I'm not going to do it because it's going to totally change my lineups. You're going to go in and click this DK, whatever you name it, but this is the one that we just edited and dropped the lineups from the DFSR CSV into. Re-upload that, and those lineups will automatically change. So you can edit your lineups multi-entry anytime. This works for any sport as well. Another thing that you can do if you haven't reserved any lineups yet, and you've got these 50, 50, and 50 lineups saved here, is just come to the same edit entries when you go to the lineups tab and just go to upload CSV. Now you've got your CSVs here, 1, 2, and 3. One at a time you're going to have to do. And do it that way. And then when you go to your 150 max, you're going to have to choose. What that does, though, is just put your first lineup. So some of these 22 lineups that you've already got in, if you're in multiple contests, it's going to mess with that. So what I suggest is whatever contest you're building lineups for, go in and reserve those seats in DraftKings first of all. Come into your lineups, edit entries, and then download those entries. And then, like I said, once you do that, and you open that CSV, you're just going to use the 2 CSVs in concert with each other. So what you're going to see when you download the DraftKings one is the contests that you're in listed here like this with the players. And like I said, you can come in here. What you'll find is, again, if you just reserve those entries and don't put any players in them, just reserve them, it's going to be empty when it comes in here. So then, like I said, you're just going to use the DraftKings CSV, pick your 20 lineups, or if you've gone over to the optimizer, another way to do it is if you've come over to the optimizer and you've just built 20 lineups with the optimizer, click optimize. We'll let it build out 20. Now the CSV, when you download from DraftKings, is going to be just 20 lineups. And when you open that, a little bit slow here today. Just like me, been up since 4:30 in the morning. All right, so here's your 20 lineups. 6 by 20, copy from the DFSR CSV, and then you want to go back into your DraftKings one, which I deleted here. It is down, but go put them in those blank spots. So that's how you're going to do it. If you want more help with that, exporting lineups on any sport, NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, or PGA, hit me up. I've been doing it quite a bit lately, doing the multi-entry, using the tools quite a bit, especially this random. This is the number one filter that I've been using lately, is the randomness filter, plus the exposures, plus editing the points here as well. Thanks for tuning in. If you got any more questions, suggestions, leave them below. the video in the comment section. Hit me up in the DFSR chat, or like I said, over on Twitter at Jaeger_bombs9 or at Daily Fantasy SR. Thanks a lot and good luck this week.